Let's go now to our friend Bimnet Abibi from Galaxy Trading. As always, Bimnet, welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Thanks for having me.
So, Bitcoin, I guess, is technically flat a little bit, although we did earlier this week hit a yearly high of like nearly 53K, but now we're back in the 51 range. I mean, it's basically the same range. We've been over 50K for 9 consecutive days. Ether has outperformed a little bit in the last week or two.
Yeah.
But still, I would say below where it was the last time Bitcoin was at 50K. So still also kind of in its range in the scheme of things. So not a ton of news crypto major price action wise since we last spoke. Is that your view of the crypto markets at the moment?
Yeah, no, I would tell you that the price action we've seen over the past week is incredibly constructive.
Yeah.
Right? What you're seeing is an asset class maturing in front of, your face, basically. The ETF volumes have started to, materially, go higher. You've had consistent, inflows. Dips have been bought. And, in ETH, it's less institutional right now. But I think, what's capturing folks, with respect to ETH is kind of just the broader crypto narrative, right? Around tokenization, stable coins. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of meetings that I'm just getting pulled into about this different effort, that other effort.
Yeah.
And it seems like now, it's people have finally realized that it's here to last. It's not like some fad where, some bank or whatever random firm for a year invests in it, and then the next year it's
or they do innovation theater, which I used to call it. No, it seems more durable now.
That is exactly how I would describe it.
Yeah.
It seems much more durable. And I think that makes folks very excited for, where ETH's going to be, on a go forward basis. And then I genuinely think 3K is a big level. It's the highest level ETH has been at in
April 22.
Yeah,
basically.
And there's lots of good reasons for it. Eigenlayer has been really constructive. Bitcoin's been doing well.
So it's high beta. There's
wealth
the
effect,
restaking situation.
Yeah, supply that's getting staked.
And it's been. I would point out too. I think our audience will know this, but I mean, Bitcoin is, I would say, more predictably scarce, certainly, than ETH, but ETH has been basically flat supply for years now, and so it's also scarce, is my point. So if demand increases, it can.
But the other thing is just the culture of asset allocation in the U.S., right? People just buy and hold. And normally, in equity world, in fixed income, and part of it's one, if you sell something, that's a taxable event. But two, a lot of people invest in stuff to hedge themselves versus fiat the basement. People are always afraid of that.
Right.
Anyway, with ETH, you've had a ton of bag holders that just haven't sold through many cycles, and I'd say the underperformance of ETH relative to Bitcoin, you can assign some of it to just how much was in bankruptcy estates. Celsius was selling a ton, and you could see it on chain every day. So there was always all this supply. But now, that's kind of cleared up a little bit, and it looks like an asset that's just run out of sellers.
Yeah.
And you have a bit of marginal flow, and markets get set at the margin. And, there are tactical guys and crypto native hedge funds, et cetera, playing for swings here and there, but broadly, ETH is in the big asset game now. With Bitcoin, and what do people do? They just buy, hold, accumulate, and there's tons of ETH maxis, et cetera.
For sure, big community,
sound money, and all of that.
They have interesting technology narrative with the L2s.
Yeah, it's
really
got a
being
story.
used.
It's got a chart. Their flows, it's trading well, and I rarely allow myself to get there in terms of, I'm moving on to Bitcoin now, but I rarely let myself go there in terms of right tail stuff.
Yeah.
The analysts on TV calling for 250 grand and $1 million. I try to be a little bit more pragmatic about market expectations, but it's really hard not to think what the future value of Bitcoin is going to be based on the current supply dynamics that we know about right now. In terms of just the flows we've had so far are exceptional, I would say, at this point. They weren't at the start. And that's without Bitcoin ETFs being in all the platforms, right? Without the distribution of the entire U.S.,
Wealth management platforms,
all-
banks,
all of
broker
that.
dealers. Yeah.
etc. And so I think you're just kind of at the tip of the iceberg with respect to how far-reaching this ETF product is going to be, and to go along with that, you have the supply of the halvening, right? Like literally, like supply, is gonna come down, and so it just kind of seems like one of those things that's just always going to have marginal buyers, and really not that much in terms of sellers. It could be speculators selling, etc. But
one of the other sort of this year questions has been rates, right?
Absolutely.
And we know we have the halving. I love your point about the advisor platforms. Not even. I mean, we've said this over the last couple of weeks, but like frankly, surprised. Obviously, happily surprised with the volumes and inflows that we've seen in the ETFs even before this main market for them comes online. That's just great. That just makes me even more bullish. And that's a major one, the catalyst of various large bank or broker-dealer wealth management platform turning on Bitcoin ETFs is going to be a drip, drip, drip that you hear over the next 12 to 18 and 24 months. But the halving is a big narrative event. And I've always been of the view, especially this is what happened in 2020, right? Was the monetary easing, historic, arbitrary, crazy levels, at the same time that Bitcoin, credible, neutral, predictable, tightens. You had been for a while in the fall and earlier this year, it looked like the same dynamic was going to happen. Obviously, the easing that we're expecting is not nearly what happened in COVID, but that arbitrary human-designed controlled rate cuts and maybe balance sheet runoffs and easing would occur at the same time as the halving again.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have the halving. It looks like rate cuts won't happen at that time, right?
Yeah, so most likely May or June will be the first.
Well, if it's May, that's still kind of right there. I mean, we're looking at April 20th or 19th for the halving. But my question is, are you surprised to see Bitcoin's performance in the face of what Fed funds rate at 5.25? Like rates are so high, but Bitcoin's almost at all-time highs. One, do we need cuts? Two, is it better to have them sooner or later? Because I was thinking maybe even later is better since it's doing great with it here. It's like gives it a second shot if it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that timing and stuff?
No, yeah. So in terms of one, like, does the economy need cuts? And that's up for debate. The current data says you don't need them, right? Employment's incredibly, contained or low, and prices, there's still upside risk to inflation, at least as far as we can tell right now. And so it's really up for debate. I'd tell you the best logic for cutting is that stuff has normalized and you are at restrictive levels and you're, let's say 200 basis points above restrictive. So you probably, if your policy objectives are met, you want to get to neutral and you're not at neutral.
Right.
And then your risks are, if you think your risk is more tilted towards a hard landing or unemployment ticking higher, then you should probably start cutting before that turn happens. And so that's the logic with rate cuts. And, I think it's going to be an important driver for markets, but I tell you the scenarios are already like baked in to a certain extent, right? We've gone from a market that prices in 7 cuts to closer to 3-4, right? And you've kind of established that range. And so if you go back to pricing in a lot more cuts, like that's probably going to be because the economy has turned and, maybe stocks will do well in that environment. They most likely will because they do well in any environment, it seems like right now. But that's kind of where you are. I'd say the bigger thing for me, in terms of monetary policy that I think hits home, even more with respect to Bitcoin is the balance sheet management, right? If we live in a world where everybody, is forced to recognize the fact that we are basically not going to be able to reduce the balance sheet at a certain point, and that ultimately, because of the fiscal situation, that the balance sheet has to be ever expanding on a go-forward basis. Like the moment where we're just like printing money to buy our own debt to go, spend money on
social
all the
programs,
fiscal,
any type of programs,
any
wars,
program,
who knows what,
whatever.
Yeah,
and it's like it's just that I think will kind of drive the message home about fiat debasement, right? It's
perpetual and inevitable in this current system.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, perpetual and inevitable.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of time before that happens. And I think you know, that balance sheet policy shift is kind of what I'm more focused
So
on.
that might be the second shot when we really
correct.
It's both
Yeah.
when we see it, but also when it becomes like understood that that's
Yes.
what's going to happen.
But at the end of the day, I could tell you that, you know, macro markets are the most important thing. And like if NASDAQ crashes 5%, Bitcoin will crash 5%. Like, you know, that stuff is mostly true. But I think you really have to think about Bitcoin in isolation. And there's a whole investor base that wasn't able to get access before that is just getting access. Markets move at the margin. And if there are going to be more marginal buyers and sellers on a consistent basis for Bitcoin, the price needs to go a lot higher.
Yep.
And that's kind of where we're at. And you could talk to people on either end of the monetary policy spectrum, and I don't think it would sway you on, you know, where Bitcoin prices are headed. Like I've talked to macro guys that are super hawkish and super dovish, but most of them are pretty bullish Bitcoin, and they wish they had more.
Yep, I hear you. Well, Bim Netabibi, my friend from Galaxy Trading, as always, thank you so much.
Pleasure.